Node, Angular sections. So that's a really good resource if you want to take a look at it. Here's a couple other ones. Udemy. You guys know Udemy? Is it
Udemy? It's not Udemy.
No, it's Udemy, like university.
That's how I say it, but I don't know.
All right, well, however you say it, it's awesome. I mean, just make sure you're getting good courses with good, recommended, or you read the reviews, because some of the teachers might not be as good as some of the other ones. But whatever you really want to learn is really on there. And if you have the time to sit there and go through a course, you're definitely going to get a lot out of it. So I highly recommend taking a look at that. And if you have the time and the will to go through that. Something else OSS I mentioned briefly is Open Source Society. If you want to get real hardcore, they have a full-on bachelor's degree, like the equivalent of the curriculum to a bachelor's degree that you can get for free online. And they have a path where you start out doing maybe core mathematics that, as it relates to programming, and then get into like programming 1 and programming 2 and algorithms and data structures and everything that you would learn in a 4-year bachelor's degree program online for free. So they'll link the path you should take to different courses that are free. Like a lot of them is like MIT, OpenCourseWare, and some of the other things. But it's cool because they kind of aggregated all that together for you and put that in a nice package that you can essentially use to gain all the skills that you might want to gain as a developer. So also don't forget, and this is really important, you have to code. So reading all the tutorials in the world are great. Reading, doing all the courses and looking at tutorials or on YouTube and whatever, that's all great. But you're never, ever, ever going to get good at any of this stuff if you don't make mistakes, if you don't fail, and you don't, actually try to implement what you're learning. And that goes for whether you're junior or senior or anything, because as you start to change what you're looking at, and these things move so fast. So if you don't sit down and put, I guess, pen to paper or keys to fingers, you're not gonna get better. So I think that's a really important point to get its own slide. All right. Let's say you do all this stuff, and now you're getting ready to interview. These are just a couple things that I know through some of the resources that I've done are really helpful when you get to that interview and people are asking you whiteboard questions or coding live or anything like that. Cracking the coding interview. I haven't personally read it, but I've heard great things about it, where they'll go through each algorithm and how to answer the questions and the ways that they're looking to have them answered. HackerRank, LeetCode, and Code Fights are all kind of the same thing. So I would use the same advice from the second step on this one, which is pick one and just use that one because they're all kind of the same.
You should spell Leet with 3s.
Why? What?
You're not nerd enough to understand why.
I guess not. All right.
In Russia, there was no E's.
Yeah. In Mother
We
Russia.
had to use 3s.
The E's each you. All right, so let's move on to React. What is React? Straight from the docs. It's a declarative, efficient, and flexible JavaScript library for building user interfaces. So what does that mean? It's essentially a different way to put your app together than maybe you're used to. Like if you were just using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, you would maybe write your JavaScript in external files and then use them to manipulate the DOM however you want. React has a specific way to do that while still allowing you to write JavaScript the way you want. So it's not super opinionated, but it does have its kind of way. The main building blocks of an app in React are components. Components are, let's see, they let you split the UI into independent, reusable pieces and think about each piece in isolation. Why is that good? It's good because now you have reusable pieces of your app that you can put together however you want. If you want to make a change to something, you know that that functionality lives within this tightly knit component that might have this information. So I have a small, very, very small app that I built for this talk, and the code that you'll see on the screen is directly from that app that we can kind of go through. So Yeah, so components can be functions. That's really all they are. They take in input or not, and they return JSX. JSX is a controversial way to have HTML within your JavaScript. For all intents and purposes, it's XML, but it's kind of HTML. But sorry, HTML. But instead of saying class, you have to say class name, and there's a couple other kind of quirks with it. So this is a very simple function that I'm sure you can guess what it does. It has a logo and a header, right? So that's like an example of a very simple kind of functional component. Or they can be classes. So typically with React components, most of them will be like the first one, which are just kind of functions, right? Each kind of logic tree, I guess, would have one of these where you can tap into some of these lifecycle methods like component did mount or component did unmount or component will mount and do something there. Maybe you're going to get some data. Maybe you're going to dispatch an action creator to Redux that's going to then get some data and put it in your global state, which is what Redux does. It manages global state. So we'll talk about that also. But best practice is really to have like less classes and more pure components that kind of pass down props. So there's that. Props. What are they? Props are essentially they're essentially like HTML elements. Like right here, speaker equals speaker. That's a prop. So in the first line, what's happening here is that's a function that's taking in an array of speakers and then mapping them, passing the speaker and the index to this component. So this speaker component is going to be returned as many times as there are elements in that array, right? So that's kind of one way you can kind of iterate over a list and show data that way.
Quick question.
Yeah.
So just to be clear, is this written in ES6? Like,
yes, it is.
Is everyone clear about the syntax that they're seeing here? Like what the fat arrow function is and
Yeah,
props and all that good stuff?
Are you guys all familiar with ES6 for the most part? This is like essentially like, this is the same thing as saying function speakers, curly braces, speakers.map, and then return the second half. Everybody kind of knows ES6 at this point? Cool. And then the bottom one is the actual speaker component, which as you can see, it's just an LI element with the speaker prop that's being passed down as an object. So speaker.name and speaker.topic are both being like displayed in that. So one thing that you do in React is you use your curly braces to kind of let the program know that this is a variable and this is what we want you to display. So this is also right here, this is a ES6 syntax of destructuring. So that's the same thing as just putting the, you're basically calling this off of this dot props. That's how you would do it in, I guess, ES5. So, and now let's talk about Redux. Let's see how we're doing. Probably going pretty fast here. Sorry. So what is Redux? We talked about it a little bit. Redux is managing global state. So in React, you want to manage the state of the app at any point in time within Redux, which means when things happen within the app, when you click on a button, when you change a text box or whatever you're doing, you want that to be in your global state. So that state is able to kind of dictate the way that app looks in that point of time. And let's kind of go into what that is. What does that mean? It's very simple for what it is. There's actions and there's reducers, right? So, like I said, maybe in component did mount, maybe when that component first loads, you want to hit an API to get back a bunch of data. You would make an action creator to go ahead and hit that API. So using fetch or promises or Axios or whatever your favorite way to get data from an API. And then once you retrieve that data, you would want to put that in a reducer, which is essentially going to be basically like an array of objects that is going to manage your state. So in this case, you can see what am I doing? It's essentially two text boxes. One of them that is the speaker's name, and the other one is the speaker's topic. And when you hit click, enter, submit, whatever, it's going to set the type and then set those two variables within the object. So again, this is using destructuring, which is the same thing as saying name, colon, name, right? Or topic, colon, topic. So you can kind of get an idea for what that looks like. That gets sent to the reducer, where you can set an initial state, and then it gets the action, which again is that. So it's going to do a switch statement on action.type. If the type is set speaker details, then you're going to return this. And does everybody know the spread operator? Yeah, it is. So this basically just kind of spreads out the array and puts the rest of the array within.
AV problem. You guys continue on and say I'm not here.
Man, my AV guy is struggling.
Totally like it's not
Did I mark you up?
What?
Totally like he's not there at all.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So as you can see, so it returns. It basically sets name to action.name, which is what it's going to be getting from the click handler, and then it sets topic to action.topic. Takes the rest of state, injects that into the rest of that array, so that we're not, forgetting about the information that might have been set to state previously to this action generator call. And then you just need a default, which basically just returns state if there's an error or if the actions are empty or what have you. So, any questions so far? Cool. So, let's look at this app, look at the code. And
Do you have a link to the app there? Is that what it's on?
yeah, it's on my GitHub, and I can put these slides up too if anybody is kind of interested.
Please do. Add them to the meetup one after.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? Just kind of taking a step back, big picture. Is this like a managing state of the application in the browser, like a session object, but in the browser? Is that what that is? Conceptually?
I guess, right?
Yeah.
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 It's more than a session object. It's the entire state of the application. So everything that you could possibly imagine as far as state goes would be part of Redux.
Be part of Redux, but
Right.
why? So you just can't just use like a hash map with keys and values?
That's essentially what it is.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll show you, this is essentially,
Can you blow it up a little bit, please?
is it small?
Yeah.
How's that? Everybody see?
Almost no.
All right. Got it?
That's better.
All right.
And if you click on the top right, the top left icon, then it'll be just the code. That's
Control B, Command B.
awesome.
Command
Even
B.
better.
Here you go. You learned something, maybe.
Awesome. I did.
Cool. So, this is essentially the entry point to the app, like the first component that's going to hold the other components, which is one of the reasons why React is so nice, that you could go in here and kind of set out the skeleton of what your web page is going to look like, right? You want a header on top, a navigation bar, maybe you want a sidebar, whatever you want. You can kind of set that out in here and then have those components kind of permeate down into the tree, essentially, where they have other components that they're feeding props into and information into, and they all kind of live off of that. So just to give you an idea of what this really, really exciting app does, let's say Jumbo is doing his next talk on Vue, because we know he loves Vue so much. When you hit enter,
What is Vue? I never heard about it, and I've been here several times.
we'll talk about it maybe next month.
Sorry.
Maybe next month.
We'll see.
So what you can see happening here, these are the Redux tools. They're seeing the diff in the set speaker details, which, again, I hit submit, action creator gets fired, Redux reducer gets fired, and then it amends to global state, which in this case is that object, right? If I do another one, and Damien gives a talk, what do you want to give a talk about next month?
Yeah, that view thing.
View? Well, he's already doing a view. You can do
Oh.
HTML5.
View, but spelled like, yeah, perfect.
Yeah, you good? But you're wearing an HTML5 shirt, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Excel.
Damn.
What?
Excel, yeah. Excel. Nice, I like that.
Microsoft Word.
So there you go. So you see, state again gets amended, and another object gets pushed on top of the first one. So this is essentially what Redux is doing. These are the Redux dev tools. You can also go back in time, see the first one versus the second one, see what changed. Which for this app, obviously, it's probably a little bit on the trivial side, but when you have more complicated apps with more state in Redux, it's really useful and helpful to be able to kind of go forward and backwards in time and be able to see kind of what is happening within Redux. So there's also React tools, which we can look at real quick. And what React dev tools do, will show you your props in any given component. So you can see this app is wrapped in Connect, which is connecting it to the Redux store. And then this is the app, which is this one. And then you see within it will be header and the input form component as well. So in each one of these, you can kind of click on them, see what props are there. So if you went to like the speaker one, you can see what props are being passed down with Damien in HTML5. So what that looks like in code would be, let's see. So obviously the header is the header. That's kind of what was on I think one of my early slides, like the first or second one. Will show you this header, and it's just a nicely, tightly knit, wrapped up component with some JSX in there, showing you just exactly what that's going to be doing. The other one, the input forms, is a little bit longer because those are forms, and it's kind of the same thing where this is a class where we're binding the submit form method, which happens on click to this keyword. This is the method, and this is what it's rendering. So it's just a normal input form, and let's see. On submit, we call this .submit form, which takes the refs from the input fields, and you pull them off of this .refs, and then I'm basically dispatching them in that action creator within Redux with name.value, topic.value, and then I'm resetting them to be blank because you want them to be blank. Remember, React doesn't do like server calls, so it's not going to refresh the page, so you have to kind of do all this stuff manually. So just to go, for the sake of going in order, let's look at that action, which we already looked at quickly, but basically it's just taking those refs now, and now they're in this function, setting to this object, and then calling this reducer, which we already looked at, that puts it in global state. Does that make sense to everybody? It's like a very basic kind of look at the way React looks, the way React works. And then there's the speaker container, which is kind of the next. So if you look at the input forms component.
Hey Jason, I got a question.
Go ahead.
On the Redux stuff. So how often do you use Redux? Do you use it on all your apps? Or
Yeah.
you do?
I know there's MobX and Flux, and there's competitors to Redux that get really good write-ups, and they are supposed to be awesome, especially MobX. I've never used it.
Okay, so here's maybe another way. How do you use Redux?
In this particular app?
Not in this app. I mean, like in real life, how do you use it? Like, because you said in your apps you use Redux. So
Yeah.
in your apps, how do you? Because here's what I'm trying to get at. I'm trying to find out when I need to pull the trigger and use Redux. Because I'm in a web app now that we're building this company I work at, and I don't need it yet. And I'm curious, like when is it like, oh wow, Redux has saved my life versus it's just.
Well, what are you using? Because you're using React, right? So what are you using to manage your state right now? Just nothing?
If there's a couple things we need to manage state, and I just put it in local storage.
You just put everything into local storage?
Just like there's a drop down like and like a couple little preset things. It's not everything. It's just maybe
Right.
3 or 4 things. But like what?
That's a determining factor for when you need to use state management versus not.
Like what is your line? That's what I'm trying to determine. What is your line for like, hey, I really need state management?
Honest answer to that question is when so I probably should have talked about this earlier, kind of create React app and the way, because React has a lot of tooling. There's just a lot of setup to it. So Facebook, who created React, also created what we call Create React app, what they call Create React app, which is essentially, they have it as a GitHub repo, you just clone it, and then you're up and running in React. So to answer your question, I put Redux in the second I clone Create React app. The next thing I do is I npm Redux and React Redux, and I put it in. Because I don't know you're definitely not getting an advantage to putting it in local storage, right? So why not have that in a persistent state that's, lasts throughout the app instead of, having it in local storage?
Does Redux survive a screen refresh by mistake or otherwise?
No.
Okay.
Right? No.
No. Well, if you persist it somewhere, then yeah.
Okay.
But I personally, I second what Jason says. There's a lot of benefits to using it right from the beginning. Even though Dan Abramoff, he says don't use it to begin with. But respectfully, I kind of disagree with him. It's just, especially once you start using the connect high order function to connect components to Redux, it just helps out so much. You can then at that moment move components around without having to pass state between them. And it's just something good to have in the beginning, I think. So.
Yeah, because it kind of persists throughout your app, and connect is a good point, which I haven't really gone through. And this is not really a good example of it, but this is. So the way that this component is getting the state is not through props. It's through Redux. It's through connect. So I'm exporting this component, this function, and then when I'm passing to the connect function another function, which basically takes state and then pulls off of state the speakers object. It's basically sets state.setSpeakers to the speakers object, and then passes in the container because it returns a function. But what that does is essentially gives me access to this on props. So now I'm selectively connecting my components to Redux. So now on my props on this, I have speakers, or rather here, speakers, which this is the same thing as saying if I didn't do this fancy ES6 destructuring thing, this would be, well, I'd have to change it to not implicitly return, but let's pretend I already did that. I would write it like this. Right? So
would a benefit be that you automatically, on your other components, get the state that is the global spot, versus if it's in local storage, you have to tell it to go get that information you're looking for?
Yeah, it's definitely already in there, and especially, it's definitely easier to have, selective state within your components automatically. It kind of just kind of flows with the way React is meant to be used, versus local storage, which is a little bit of a kind of workaround, right? From in the React world.
Yeah.
So that would be, again, I put it in for the second I clone it. So
the way I see it is all about data. So when your data is changing, or when you have a user input to contribute to the data changes, React is supposed to figure out very smartly. So you add by changing and only refresh those pieces. So having the state separately helps it figure out only the pieces that need to change. So that way you don't have to worry about updating when it updates. It will update when the data tells it to. So some of the very simple examples out there is when you type in a text field, something else changes. They have the state changing on every key press, for example. That's a very basic example, but it's one. So whenever you're dealing with data that is changeable, either coming from the server or with user input, I think is really good.
Yeah, I think that's probably the crux of my question. Right now, this web app, we don't have a lot of state with this app. So there's not a lot of user interaction. You're just looking and viewing your work and saving
Right.
notes and stuff like that.
So there's not a lot of state. So
that's probably why I have that question, because I just don't have a lot of state.
yeah, that's just good. It's a good point that Roman brings up, is that the components re-render when props change. So to have props linked to have your state linked to your props, to your components, will re-render those components when those props change. And that's obviously saving cycles where you're not re-rendering the entire app. You're only re-rendering the components that actually have props that change. So that's kind of a cool thing. So I don't really remember where I was at, but I think I was talking about this function, right? That returns this function and then iterates kind of over it, and that's how we're able to get these in like a nicely kind of formatted list without having to refresh or anything like that. Yeah, so so this is getting speakers from state, passing it to this function, which is right here, and then returning this component, which we looked at before, but to look at it again real quick, it's just, you guys want me to put that on a separate line? How's that? So that's just returning a list item and putting in these variables that it's getting from. So in this instance, it's passing it back by props, because again, this is what makes it a prop. Speaker equals speaker in here. And in this component, it's getting the props from state. So, does that make sense?
To me, at least.
Everybody? Does anybody have any questions about so far what we've kind of talked about?
So one of the things I wanted to open up and switch the format a little bit is give an opportunity for a little bit of Q&A. There are some questions that I had that I'm not sure if are clear for everybody here, so I wanted to ask those questions.
Great.
Kind of talk about it. I'm going to ask Damien and Rick to come up to help me QA these or A these Qs with you and whatnot. So one of the things, so thank you for your talk. Are you done before we move into Q&A?
Yeah, I'm basically done. I also wanted to say this at the beginning, but I kind of forgot, is that I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination on this stuff.
Now you tell us.
Yeah. So disregard everything that I just said. No, but I'm not an expert. I'll do my best to answer all your questions. If I don't know something, though, I'm going to tell you I don't know it, and I'll ask Leo to answer.
I said that Jason, like I would say it's valuable for people if you show them the Redux tool, and show them how you can play the state back. Kind of like a VC, like.
Yeah, Leo might have not been paying attention to that part. But yeah, for those of you that were looking at during this portion of the talk, you could rewind state this way. So like if I put somebody else in here, put Leo, functional 2. So if you guys were here last month, Leo did a great talk on functional programming. So you can see the first guy was Jeremy, second one was Damien doing his HTML5 talk. And then the third one is.
I think the change you have, if you hit the commit button or the jump button, like on when you're going over the list, it'll actually reset the app to the state that it was back then.
Oh, fantastic.
So if you say jump, yeah, you see.
Magic.
Well, I did not know that, so very cool.
Yeah, I mean, it just shows the power of Redux. You can do things like this, amazing.
Yeah.
One of the biggest benefits of this tool is for debugging. So when you're trying to figure out why did something not work, you can actually have a complete ledger of things that happened. So like what did the users click on, or what did all the things that actually happened to your app before something went wrong. So
Yeah.
you can go back and that's what happened.
Which you don't get in local storage, I don't think. Unless there's some crazy fact I don't know about.
Yeah, but again, my use case is the only reason we're putting stuff in local storage is because if somebody accidentally closes a browser tab or hits Command R and refreshes it,
That's fair.
that's the only reason we have this stuff. Because otherwise, we wouldn't even use local storage. So, again, my use case is so simple.
Mechanism though than the state that he's talking about for Redux, because that doesn't persist across refreshes, right?
Redux does not persist.
You can though. There are stores. There are Redux stores where you can make it sticky.
You could dump the whole object graph to local storage.
Well, there are Redux plugins that you can connect it to different stores. And stuff.
But to be fair, we're not all making iPhone watches apps like you are.
Well, that's
the whole
nothing to do with. This is just my simple web app. That's why I was asking about Redux. I was just trying to decide why do I need it for my web app, and it doesn't sound like I need it yet.
Gotcha. Well, it's a cool tool. It definitely has a lot to it, and a lot that it can kind of save you time and headaches with, and like Roman said, debugging. So going back in time and forward in time, and big apps that have a lot of state and can get complicated. I mean, it's definitely an easy way to kind of manage all that. So, yeah, I guess that's kind of it. So, thank you guys. I appreciate it. And I'll open source this for you if you want to use this this app.
Very cool. Yes. Please do put the slides on the.
I'll put the slides up, and I will. If you guys want to kind of see the code, if you want to, you can go to my GitHub, which is JSW324.
Of course.
And then it is React Talk 2017.
Cool. Thank you.
And then you'll be able to take a look at that. Also, guys, Create React App, which is by far just the easiest and simplest way. And they have a really good kind of step-by-step instructions on how to get started, how to clone the repo, how to have your how to turn that into yours, what you want to build. So don't go crazy with Webpack and doing all the React tooling yourself. It's just not worth it. It's a nightmare.
Yeah, it saves you so much time.
So this saves you a ton of time. Facebook released it. It's right. It's theirs. It's maintained. You can see the last commits were 2 days ago. So they're obviously doing that. And then there's other kind of React kind of iterations, like Next.js, if you wanted to get into the true universal JavaScript apps that do server-side rendering, which can help with SEO and some other things. So there's a ton of things in this world. React Native, React VR to do virtual reality apps. React Native allows you to write a React app in much the same way you would write a web app, and it will compile to native Android or iPhone code, or Windows Phone if you're Damien.
So Ryan wants it, you gotta do it.
That's right. So you gotta serve the people.
Yes, indeed.
So yeah, there's just a lot of stuff going on in this world, and it's exciting. So
very cool.
That's it. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
So there's a couple things that I wanted to talk about, and just open it up for discussion. Let's have a little bit of a Q&A. Again, I invite Damien and Rick up here to answer questions with us. But a pro tip on Udemy. Has anybody ever been to Udemy and subscribed to a video on there or whatever? I love that place. Pro tip, wait till they have a sale. They're always on sale for $10.
Every single thing is
Don't pay more than like $20.
Right.
Yes.
It's like literally every week, and if you look at it and like here, if you want to add a course to your cart and then just X out the browser tab, I will promise you that course will be $10 within like 48 hours.
Yeah.
So, otherwise they're like 180.
That is so true.
So don't feel like you need to spend the whole $200 on that particular course. Wait a little bit and get it in there. And then like what I like to do is like binge. Like I'll just spend $50 and go get 4 or 5 things. I don't necessarily need to watch. The thing that I love about it is that I own it. Where utilizing something like Lynda, I've got to pay a monthly subscription for it, so if I don't use it, I lose it type thing.
It is free with a public library.
Yes, I was going to say that. Certain libraries give it to you for free.
That's very cool.
I know that.
Yeah, that's really
So
cool.
lynda.com, depending on the library you're at, gives it to you for free.
Like the whole everything.
I think like 80% of the presentations. So
cow.
Boca Library does it. This one does not.
Boca Library does it too, huh? Wow.
The county system.
That's awesome.
The county.
The county system. Any library in the county system.
I couldn't find the link to the library that's here and all that. But
Yeah.
anyways, I own it.
So the other thing that I like to point out are find like guided tours through the technologies, right? If you're beginning, it's hard to figure out like what do I start with and what do I what do I learn first and whatnot. So I really like the idea of a treehouse where you could have a Udemy style tutorial where you just go learn a particular topic, but if you don't know what you want to learn, you start with I want to be a web developer, and they'll kind of take you through the track in there. And that first do this, then do this, and then do this, and then you get to build your own picture of what all that stuff is. So I highly recommend something like a treehouse for that guided path. But also Free Code Camp does that same thing,
Yeah.
what path do you want to choose, and it kind of helps guide you through that.
Free Code Camp also has like an amazing support community kind of around it where if you guys get into like doing the track and you're getting stuck on something, there's like, you guys know what Gitter is? Is that how you say it?
Get her done? What?
Gitter.in.
Gitter.in or whatever. It's like basically just like a giant like AOL style chat room where people go and you can ask like questions like, hey, I'm having trouble with this algorithm. You can, and somebody might like private message you and kind of help you think through it. Because you don't want the answer, right? You want to be like put on the path to discovering the answer on your own, because that's how you kind of learn.
I saw that, Gitter.
Inside of Free Code Camp, there's a thing that says help, and then there'll be like a chat option. And if you go to the Free Code Camp chat, you'll be in Gitter. But there's like a million different Gitters. You can definitely get lost in there. So I would recommend going through the Free Code Camp website.
So yeah, I just wanted to point those things out because a lot of the stuff that he mentioned in his talk about learning, I agree with 100%. So a couple of pro tips for Udemy, and if you don't know where to start, Treehouse or Free Code Camp kind of guide you down that path of where to go from there.
Hey Jeremy, so on the learning thing, your thing that you teach. So what can you? Because I might have a couple people interested in it. I don't.
Palm Beach Code School.
I just don't know enough about it. So you just maybe some people.
So we have a couple of people here from Palm Beach Code School. Maybe they can help clarify these things for me. And we have a couple of people interested in Palm Beach Code School. So does everybody have an understanding of what a code camp is, like what the purpose of they are, and why we have them? Code school. Code school,
right,
code
so
camp, kind of
boot
synonyms, right?
Code
Code camps.
Because code camp, there's a
But your thing's not a camp though, right? It's a school that over several weeks, right?
Correct. So yeah, so there are two ideas, right? You have a code camp, which is typically like a short weekend where you kind of like deep dive into a technology and you hack something through, and then we have a code school where we're here for an extended period of time. So what we do at Palm Beach Code School is we take you from 0 to junior web developer in a 16-week period. So we start you off, so you have two days out of the week, and we start you off with Photoshop, and then move into HTML and CSS. So we kind of put everything together as in the front-end technologies. Then we move over to front-end frameworks such as Bootstrap. We did Foundation at one point, but we kind of like solidified it to just one, and Bootstrap is the thing most on people's wish list for resumes. And then we move you over to JavaScript, and that's where we kind of like thin out the herd a little bit, because going to HTML and CSS, everyone's like, yeah, it's great, it's cool, it's fun, and then JavaScript, like, what is happening here? Like logic, because the idea of like moving from HTML and CSS have symptoms of being programming languages, meaning they have like syntax and you have rules you have to abide by, but you can't like set a variable or do any logic in there. So when you get to JavaScript, you got to think like a computer, and that's really where the brick wall just kind of smashes you right in the face. You're going so fast in HTML. But then the way we teach is we start off with JavaScript because all you need is a text editor and a browser, right? The barrier to entry is super low in JavaScript. But the concepts I teach in there are programming, period. So the idea of what a function is, the idea of what a variable is language agnostic. So after we go through 6 classes of JavaScript, we move into PHP and MySQL. And then we wrap things up with a couple WordPress classes. And then you have 4 classes to build your capstone. And the capstone is any project that you want to work on that solidifies or demonstrates the knowledge that you've learned at the school. So that's what a code school is, and that's what's different about it from a code camp. Usually code camps are smaller, more intensive direction, and code school is we're trying for the longevity. The thing I like to...
So it's twice a week?
Yes.
Twice a week in the evenings, I guess?
Ours is twice a week, either Monday and Wednesday or Tuesday and Thursday.
Okay.
And
what about the age groups?
So and that's an interesting topic because the age group like really ranges. But if I were to say an average group would be a 28 to 36 would be the average, because a lot of times I get career switchers. When they feel like they've gone as far as they can in their particular career, they can't advance anymore, or they're not satisfied in what they're doing, and this sounds cool. They've heard about it on the radio, or someone else they know is doing this. So we get a lot of those, trying to shift from one career to another. So
that's what happened to Jason. He was like I own a recruiting company. How far further can I get? I'm screwing. I'm getting rid of it. I'm coming out of the
But we do have
that's exactly
all the way down to we have one high school student talk about an overachiever. His dude's phenomenal. He's in high school right now and he's completing our course just to get extra credits so that way he can apply to college better. So, and then we've had age ranges of like empty nesters, like their kids have gone off to college and they want to do something. So the range is really dramatic there. So if you guys are interested in Palm Beach Code School, feel free to see me, Jeremy at Palm Beach Code School, and I'll get you in contact with Jim. We encourage you to come down.
Next time you start?
September 11th, I think, is our
That's the next class?
Yeah.
Or your next 16-week thing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But we, feel free to come by the school at any time to check it out and meet with Jim.
Where is it?
Good question. It is on the corner of Military and North Lake. So we're located in Palm Beach Gardens.
So it's close. Okay, so it's north of here.
Yeah, about 4 hours.
It's at the Playmobil Castle.
Hmm?
At the Playmobil Castle.
You guys just offer like that one track?
Currently, yes, but we are in developments to have a more in-depth WordPress course, an iOS course, and back-end. So like more back-end languages where we teach like .NET and in-depth PHP and maybe Ruby and maybe server-side JavaScript with Node. So those are in the works right now. Currently, our flagship app is Junior Web Developer.
Right.
Cool. So does anybody have any questions about the topic that was presented? Learning how to learn or React in general? We got a couple of experts up here, and one guy who's an expert and doesn't think he is yet.
General question. Did you mention, you said you were self-taught. Did you mention how you taught yourself?
Yeah, basically everything up there are things that I've done with the exception of open source society. That track I didn't do, but I did take CS50. I did do free code camp. I did a bunch of Udemy courses, and I just built a bunch of stuff. I think that's the most important thing is getting a foundation and then trying it, because you have to. Otherwise, you're just never going to learn. You're just going to know a bunch of things and be able to like regurgitate some information that you've heard somebody else say, but you won't have any firsthand knowledge. So, what do they say? If you don't get stuck, you're not doing it right. Because you should be stuck. You should be frustrating. It's hard. It's not an easy thing. So get stuck, make mistakes, and you'll get better. You'll start. Like I remember when I first started like getting really serious about programming, and I was kind of like, I don't get it. Like, is there people out there in the world that can just like if you guys? I don't know if you guys ever seen Demolition Man. But you know when Wesley Snipes like gets reanimated and he just starts typing real fast and hacking the computer? I'm always like, is that like what people do that are like senior programmers? Do they get to that level of fluency?
That's exactly what we do.
Jeremy does. Everybody else doesn't. So
He's the one.
So you just start to, as you start to get kind of better and better, you start to like remember things and be like, oh, okay, here's the higher order function I'm going to use to accomplish X, Y, or Z within JavaScript, and that kind of starts happening more and more and more as you start getting better and better and better, and then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're like, oh wow, I can actually like write code. So.
Jason, if I may just expound a little bit, the very smallest piece, which is probably the most important, find the projects that you want to do. Not just do a bunch of projects, but if you don't love what you're doing, you're not going to dive in. So I think you mentioned do a bunch of projects. Well, you probably kind of wanted them done, right? You just didn't invent something that you hated.
Right, exactly.
Find a passionate project and do something you love, and then you're going to really learn it. That's
absolutely. Find something you want to build, like whatever you're interested in life.
Insurance.
Like what's that?
It's insurance.
Yeah,
That's good.
exactly. Insurance, like
Reinsurance.
That, by the way, that's how he learned how to program, by building an insurance app with me. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Inside joke, got it. But yeah, the scratch your own itch is the idea there. Find something that you're passionate about and build it. And then the other thing is, when I was wanting to like get into gaming, I didn't know how to create my own mechanics and whatnot. So I just simply looked at the game I liked and started breaking it down and try to replicate that and just build something that already exists. There's nothing to say that you can't recreate it.
Right.
But that's the way I learned to teach the code.
And build something you know also. Like I build recruiting apps because like that's something I know. Build something you like, build something you know, build something that's going to make you happy, and it'll like you shouldn't have a shortage of ideas. You know what I mean? Like just look within your own life and what you like and what you do, and ideas should become readily apparent. And then.
But if you don't worry about recreating Twitter. Because you're not going to sell. Whatever you do, you're not going to make money from it. So
they can't even sell Twitter, so you're definitely not.
But that doing your passion, that's the key.
Yeah. Two things that I know I've worked out for people in the past is one is contribute to like an open source library that you like. Just source library that you like. That's a little bit of a higher entry level because you have to get to know the library and obviously be able to contribute to it. But I know a lot of people have had a lot of success with that, and some people have hit the jackpot with that when they become famous because they added an important feature to a popular library.
Or they get jobs. Or that company
yeah.
hires them and like, wow, look at this person that's constantly contributing to our open source library. Let's interview that person.
Yep.
And that happens, you know.
And if you guys really
Free Code Camp is open source, and you can contribute to the project if you're so inclined.
Yeah. The other one is hackathons. Also, like if you go to a hackathon, it's a great tool for a junior developer. You usually get mentored by someone more senior than you and your team, and the people working at the hackathon. So that's another great.
Agreed.
Is there one coming up? I wasn't sure.
I have no idea. There's something going on.
Something's happening with something.
Absolutely, and the idea of if you don't know where to start, the community's here for you, right? We have a lot of people that just would love to help out in any shape, way, and form. So if you have an idea and don't know where to start, these meetups are here for that reason, and that's why we open up the opportunity to just mingle for a little bit. So feel free to bring your laptops and ask a question to, you know, kind of the big dogs in town, but you know, everybody out there can help out as well. You know, so it's not just us that can help. Everybody's got advice and a path, and this goes back to my point too of like, if you guys are learning something, come up here and talk about it because you know it helps solidify the knowledge in your head a little bit more because you have to think about how to teach somebody that, but then you're also giving back to the community in that context. So my last plug would be was going to be, if you guys have a topic, we're looking for a couple to wrap up the end of the year. What do you guys want to talk about? What do you guys want to hear next? Is there does everybody understand like what a React tool is for? Should we have a talk just about why the necessity was there and what the other options are? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
Vue
is one, Angular, Ember, you know, things like that. But what do you guys want to hear about? Is there anything that you guys are particularly interested in that we can throw up on a whiteboard and get some people talking?
Yes, maybe strategies for doing HackerRank.
Strategies?
Strategy, it's simple, right? You know the trick to HackerRank is the guy who does the number one spot.
Yeah, you look at the forum. They give you
Look
the
at the
answer.
forums, everybody else the answers. So the guy who became number one in Java, without knowing Java, did it that way.
But that's not going to help you learn.
Yes.
The cracking the interview book is literally about.
That's about HackerRank. And if you go on, I think it's Code Fights. Do you know Code Fights?
Yes.
Code Fights is fun.
One of them, I think Code Fights has cracking the interview like baked in, where you can literally go through the book in the thing, and is it Code? It might not be Code Fights. Before I talk too much, is that HackerRank?
No, you have
win. If you submit tiny code to a job, you're not going to get hired because maintainability trumps short code. And HackerRank and Coder Fights are time and revenue.
Right.
The two things you don't do in professional development.
I think it's on.
So,
Well, HackerRank is more like just like to see if you know algorithms and things like that. I agree. I don't think it's very valuable, but the point is just to test people on computer science.
on how fast they can search the internet and copy and paste the internet.
Yeah, but the real, like when you have real problems, like you can't always search the internet for it. So I guess this is like an ongoing debate, right? Like what's the best way to test somebody's knowledge of programming? It's a really hard problem, right? So I don't know, but this is what I was talking about with HackerRank. Cracking the coding interview is literally inside of HackerRank. So you can go through it, and if you click on them, they'll have they'll have like this right here, which is like the video on the woman that wrote the book explaining to you how computers evaluate technical interviews or how companies, so like they have these resources kind of baked into these products, so they're a really good way to kind of bone up.
So maybe we'll have like a Q&A session where like we have one dedicated to help answer some of these questions and whatnot.
On topics,
Yep.
This is only a second topic. This is JavaScript user group. So,
Yep.
do you guys ever talk about server side?
Like Node? We haven't.
It's been a while.
For a very long time.
It's been a really
We had back in the early days, we had a gentleman come down. I learned about something called Meteor.js, and then I gave a terrible talk about it, and the guy that was there wound up coming back for the second time, giving a more in-depth, more accurate talk about it.
Because my talk was more about, I learned this is cool, everybody should look at it. So
I guess
Meteor is the only thing we've done.
I guess I'd be curious to know, is there interest in server-side in the group, or is it more browser applicant side?
Yeah, Node Talk would be cool.
Server-side's what I'm working on now, personally.
Cool. So next month you're going to give a talk on server
I don't know
side?
about that.
Dude, learn you know.
Dude, come on.
Learn you know command line.
Huh?
Cool.
Postman?
Learn
Are you going to be
know
here?
plan?
I stopped holding my breath.
You know what that is?
I'm moving on to bigger.
Command line node
You want to?
tutorial? Yeah. That's cool. You do it that way.
Mongo?
Learn you know.
Mongoose?
Mongoose is the node library.
Yeah.
Oh, no, are we doing
Mongoose
an
is like
app
a
PGA next
schema.
month?
Is a schema thing for a schema
Can't do a whole talk on Postman.
database.
Well, it's API.
So like a MongoDB kind of thing.
Postman?
That could be a
I'll
top.
be there, man.
MySQL?
I was gonna Slack you today. What's the JSON
They're
website that just serves JSON?
synonyms, right? So it's like PHP and Ruby are kind of the same thing.
He's gonna
But
It's like Word.
run with JSON.
No, Mongo's a database,
JSON
and
server.
MySQL is a database.
JSON serve
So
JSON.
they're similar.